Good morning, afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss, again here at allpointstv.com. And also we want to welcome the viewers and the listeners at WFOV, and that's 92.1. And we're always glad to have both audiences with us, and we are very just happy that you would spend your time with us, because we do realize that you could be doing other things with your time. And we are elated, and we are really very much appreciative of the fact that you spend your time with us. I have a very special guest with us today, and that's one of the great political pundits, as they call it over on Tom Sumner's show. One of the pundits here in Genesee County, one of the persons that I really enjoy talking to about political events. I asked him to come to the studio today because there's so many things that are going on. I need some help to discuss all of the things that are taking place right now. And that's Mr. Dave Huffman. And Dave, I want to thank you for coming to the studio today.
Thank you very much, George. Always an honor to be here.
And I want to let the audience know that we're going to be talking about a couple of topics this afternoon. And it'll air again on WFOV on Saturday at 12. And we'll be doing that program there at that time. Hope you'll tune in WFOV at 12 o'clock this coming Saturday. Dave, they keep talking about the Russian interference in the American election, November the 8th, 2016, and we don't have any evidence if that is true. The ones interfering with the election is the Democratic Party.
Yeah, they opened up Pandora's box and found out it was themselves.
They will not accept the verdict of the American people. And I think they're still shell-shocked because everyone was saying this is going to be a tsunami, and that Donald Trump was not even going to get 100 electoral votes, and he ended up with 304, 306, whichever way you count the vote. But he had more than the 270 by a large margin, and it was a tsunami in the other direction. And they just would not let go of this Russian narrative. And there is no evidence that Russia had anything to do with the election, nor could they have interfered with the election, because there's no central place that all the votes go into a central location, so that the vote is in fact housed somewhere. You can hack into it at a single place and then change the election results. So that's quite interesting that we still are talking about that now, more than a year after the election was held. Are you surprised a year after the fact that we're still talking about Russian collusion and no evidence, and they continue to talk about it?
Yeah, I am surprised that they've been able to linger this long with it. Really, it was sort of too bad that they were able to be cohorted into this, putting a special prosecutor involved in this, because when that happens, they want to prosecute everything, and it gets a little bit out of hand, which was evident. I don't know if you heard on the news, one of the lead investigators with McAllister was caught doing negative tweets on Trump, and he's one of the head questionnaires of the FBI. Now, that kind of stuff right there just shows you what can happen in this, because you got to be naive to think some of these people aren't very heavily partisan political people that are even working with the FBI. And we know what's happened to the FBI with Hillary erasing her emails, connected with her sales to uranium, with the Clinton Foundation, with Podesta's brother being head of the Russian firm that was negotiating those uranium deals. And for some reason, the Clinton Foundation and Podesta's brother, who was her campaign manager, decided to close down shop real quick here. Mm-hmm. So my whole thing is, no, when you're that bitter and you know that your hierarchy of all your government bureaucracy and all your happy talk and do nothing stuff for the American people is about ready to end, let me tell you something. If you've got a big job working for the federal government making $200,000 a year in big benefits, you're going to do everything to go against this president and try to smear him and make him look bad, because your job is on the line, and a lot of them know they're coming to an end. That's my take on it.
I think that's really interesting. You know, I was looking for the comment made by ABC. You know, Brian Ross was suspended without pay, which shows you the severity of the situation with him, having exaggerated a story about Donald Trump in the election, and also about this so-called collusion. I was very taken aback by the statement that ABC made. And I'm going to read what they said here. It is vital we get the story right and retain the trust we have built with our audience. These are our core principles. We fell far short of that yesterday, meaning that when Brian Ross had made the story, made the allegation that Flynn had been told by Donald Trump to make contact with the Russians prior to the election. Now that was a false story because it was after the election was over, and that puts a whole different face on it, doesn't it? In terms of
does.
If the election's already been held,
Yeah.
then you expect the president-elect to begin to make the contacts with all the governments he's going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
And there would be nothing unusual about that. But what Brian Ross was trying to do was make it appear that this was something that Donald Trump had ordered him to do prior to the election.
Yes. Which
were falling into the purview of this idea that was collusion with the Russians and so on.
And you know, it did damage too to the American public once again, because the stock markets heard that hearsay, and next thing you know, the stock market went down 350 points. Well, that affects everybody that's got investments. So that shows you what the spinoff on that fake news was too.
Yes,
it's
fake
not
news.
right.
Fake news, and ABC can act as if this is something that is unusual, but I was listening to Huckabee discussing Brian Ross, and he said that he is one of the most disgustingly dishonest persons in the media. So this is not anything unusual for the fake news industry. This is what we have right now in America. We have a fake news industry that will promote the non-news and make it appear that Donald Trump is over here colluding. The President of the United States is colluding with a foreign government against the interests of the American people. There is no president we've had in memory that's more patriotic than this president is.
No. And you know, to show you how petty the news can be, CNN said they were going to protest coming to the Trump's Christmas party, and Trump said, "Oh my gosh, Christmas has come early." But you know, the bad part about it, but the bad part about it, that's the funny part of it. But the bad part about it is these executives for CNN and these journalists that are whining and sniveling and doing all the fake news and trying to besmirch Trump. That's okay. They were invited to it too, but since they decided nobody was coming, guess what? The common guy that works for the studio, the guy doing the television camera, the guy behind the screen, your average workers for CNN, who would have loved? Wouldn't you love to get a invitation to go to the White House to the presidential Christmas party? I would have jumped at that.
I'd be honored.
And I want to tell you something. That pettiness right there, they cost their own guys their work, their work bees in CNN, who would have loved the opportunity to go that because of their elitism and because of their narcissism, decided we're not going to go, just like a bunch of spoiled little kindergartners. And that shows you how really petty and mean-spirited this liberal press is.
Yes, this book that I brought about, it's called The Liberal Man, written by Lyle Rossiter, who is an MD, and he said this in the subtitle of the book, The Psychological Causes of Political Madness. And I just think that this liberalism that has been unleashed by Donald Trump's election has been really something that goes beyond. And I knew the liberal mind was capable of these kinds of activities, but it's gone beyond what I thought they would do after the election is over. Once you have the election results and we have chosen the President of the United States, I think whatever your idea was of your candidate and who you wanted to win, I think once the result is in, you have to get behind the President of the United States and let's all pull together for the common good of the country.
Well, that's what Hillary told Trump during the debate. She says, "You're a danger if you don't accept the results of this." Well, guess what? Look who became the danger. She's out bad-mouthing him on her book tour, step by step, everywhere that he goes. Ex-President Obama is on a world tour bad-mouthing the president, which I think there might be some laws that say you're not supposed to really be unserving, your sitting president like he's doing right now with some of his comments.
Obama?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that is just, this kind of stuff has never been done in the history of our country.
I've never seen it before. Trump went to China in his Asian tour, and he had a red carpet treatment where he went. There was tremendous respect for the president because they saw in him someone that had respect for his country.
Yes.
and they had respect for him because they know that that's how they represent their country. They're not going to represent another country more so than they do their own country. So they had a lot of respect for Donald Trump on that tour. Obama went to China, I think it was last week.
Yes.
And met with President Xi. And I have never seen a past president that would shadow the president in office at the present time and go behind him and try to undermine the things he's doing to represent the country. That's kind of like a violation of the Logan Act.
Yes.
The Logan Act that was passed in 1799.
Yes.
Where you go out and you are actually doing somewhat of an ambassadorial type of thing where you're not a part of the government and speaking on behalf of the government. I think that's a violation of the law.
That's undermining our country doing stuff like that.
I've never seen it before.
Yeah. It's just incredible to watch that. And Hillary, when Matt Barr just got fired, for his improprieties, she came up with a thing. Well, he deserved it because he asked me tough questions when I was running for president. Are you kidding me? That's how vindictive, that's how petty and how vindictive these people are. They're power hungry and they're vindictive and they're dangerous and they're petty.
They're very, very dangerous. Are you surprised by the level of pettiness?
Yeah, I sort of, from powerful people, even with the liberals and the Democratic Party, you'd think that there would be a line that would be drawn, between just partisan politics and going against somebody on whatever his issues. But for some reason, this has gone downhill as far as the smear, as far as the pettiness, as far as the sniping. It is one of the most incredible things. It was almost like, the best way that I can put this, there's no term limitations in local government. If I'm a township trustee, I can run for 50 years. Mm-hmm. And we've had that happen where I live, where these guys have actually had the seat for 20 or 30 years. Well, George, you know what happens when you start thinking like that? It's no longer the people's seat, it's their seat. And I think that's what the Clintons have gotten away with. They've always had a lust for power at all costs. Forget about the American public. They've had a lust for power, and that's what drives these people. And when you take away their power, they want retribution.
Yeah, they lost the election. If what problem would anyone have in making the country great again?
Yes,
is bigger than Donald Trump or any other office holder. We have to pull for the nation. We all live in this country, and we have the benefits that come to us. If the country is doing well, we benefit from that. And what I see right now is that they are so much against this man being in office that they're willing to undermine the country to get to him.
Absolutely, that's dangerous. Dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Yes,
and make him fail because they don't want this president to succeed. And you were saying earlier that we have a obstructionist party in place. Donald Trump didn't get any support from
not one Democrat.
Not one Democrat, and he doesn't get the support he really needs from his own party. So what I'm looking for right now, though, is this election being held next Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Roy Moore,
yes,
in Alabama. That's going to be a very important election for two reasons. One is gives the Republican Party a seat that we need in order to make sure that we have a firm, foundation for the things that Donald Trump wants to get done in his agenda, but also is going to give us some clue about the election coming up in 2018.
George, what's interesting on that Moore election, now, I think if you're a sexual predator, and it all comes back, and it's true, no matter what party you are, you should get out. You should resign. You no longer represent the people anymore. You should go. Okay? But what I really had a problem with this Moore thing, this guy has run in the last 30 years, he's been involved in 8 different elections in Alabama. At no time did any of these accusations ever come up. Not one time. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, when he's running for the U.S. Senate and they know he's going to be a vote for the Trump administration, all of a sudden all these accusations start coming out of the woodwork, and common sense tells me I'm not defending him one way or another. Let him stand on his own volition as far as those charges go. But based on nothing happening in 35 years and all of a sudden it all starts happening, something smells
very
me a
suspicious.
Little bit.
I think Gloria Allred has been discredited this time. I didn't think she was really. I didn't feel she was credible in her accusation against Herman Cain. She did the
Yes.
same thing with Herman Cain in 2008. They couldn't allow him to be seen as being the front runner in the Republican Party when they're trying to say the Republican Party was racist. He was a black
Yes.
man leading the party. So she comes in, and then one accusation after another. Each claim that was made was worse than the ones made before it,
Yes.
and they kept on going until they brought this man down. I was glad to see that in Roy Moore's case that he refused to yield to these accusations, with Gloria Allred doing the same
Absolutely,
thing.
because if he would have done that, that tells everybody he was guilty.
He was guilty of it.
Yeah.
But I'm with you on that. If this man has run for office over the last 30 some odd years and never has this come up.
8 different elections.
8 different elections. Never did this come up. And all of a sudden, something that happened supposedly 30 years ago can't be checked out. And all these persons coming out of the woodwork to make these spurious, claims against a person who has not come on the scene just yesterday. This man been out there for a while. Never did you hear these claims being raised in these campaigns. And he stayed the course. I think that that handwriting, they talked about the handwriting in the yearbook.
Yes.
And they said that he had written this note to one of the accusers when she was in high school, and they have asked for the person to submit that. We can submit it to a handwriter, and those that have seen it from afar have said that does not match
No.
Roy Moore's signature.
No.
So it's just that with so many dirty games are being played
yes.
to stop this.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to make America great again. I don't care who the person is
No,
that's
I don't
doing
either.
that. I want the person that is in office to do well. I want Obama to do well.
Yeah, exactly.
He wasn't. But I will say this: Obama was not a very good president.
No.
And when I found that, I voted for him in 2008. And I was pulling for the president to do a great job. But when I found out that this man was a Solinskyite and that he was pulling against his nation, and I saw him undermining the advancement that this nation needed, I wasn't impressed with Bush either, but I was certainly not impressed with Obama.
Uh-huh.
And we ran for re-election in 2012. I didn't vote for Obama for another term because I thought it was bad for the country. But I'm looking at this president, and I'm saying that this man really wants to make this country great again. And I'm one of my majors is economics, and I see that he's doing the right things by the economy of the country, and so far all the things he's doing is designed to make this country great again. You've got to get government out of the way. You got to reduce the amount of government intrusion in the economy, get the regulations off the books. 7,000 pages of regulations. We've got to get some of that down to a manageable size, let the economy breathe again, restore the free market as much as possible, get the government out of being so intrusive. And I think he's doing all of the things that you need to do to bring the country back and make the country great, because we've been there. We are a great nation. But this interference on the part of the government, the politicians, is bringing this country down.
George, I was just making a note on the same lines that you were talking about. This tax cut that we're going to pass now, okay, that's going to be a tremendous triumph for the Trump administration and for the American public. Mm-hmm. It's going to stimulate the economy and business like you've never seen. It's going to be tremendous. But here, the Democrats, we didn't pick up one Democratic vote on their side on overhauling the tax bill. They're supposed to be for the downtrodden and the middle class people. And here they're telling the Republicans all we were trying to do, the same old, make the rich get better and give the rich all the advantages, which was the farthest thing from the truth. Here is a party in the last 8 years that spent over $9 trillion of us being in debt. And even Obama, compared to the first 43 presidents, that were before him, doubled what the 43 did as far as our national debt. Here is the same liberal Democratic Party telling the Republicans what we should be doing to help the economy. How could they even look people in the eye? How could Schumer and Pelosi even go into the cameras and look people in the eye with that hypocrisy?
Yeah, the economy, the deficit was $10.6 trillion when Obama took office in 2009, and in that 8-year period of time that he was president, it went up to 20 trillion.
Yeah.
So it doubled in during one administrative term, these 2 terms of the president. We've got to get the budget under control, and if you give the tax breaks, you got to then do the other thing too. The other side of that is to reduce the size of government, and you got to be able to pay for it. You pay for it by getting government size down. You can't just cut taxes and don't cut the size of government. And you've got to get government to go back underneath the restraints of Article 1, Section 4, Clause 2, where the government is not to be doing all these intrusive things, and get these regulations off the books.
Absolutely. That's what he's done. Now, I will tell you, unfortunately, there's always a good part and there's a bad part to every wonderful thing that you're trying to do. Our bad part right now is Rocket Man over in North Korea. This guy is hell-bent for destruction, for blackmail. He doesn't care what anybody, he's got to prove to his own people that he has in the gulags that he's the big power structure, or it's all going to end for him too. So he's not going to agree with anybody. He's dangerous. And that was, he launched his longest rocket launch of them all last week. They say that perfected could hit anywhere in the United States with a nuclear warhead. Okay, Trump's not going to allow that, and his military specialists and the people who he has around aren't going to allow that. But here again, I heard him talking about the military because we've slashed the military budget. The liberals did in this country down. I heard people in military Air Force generals say that out of half of our U.S. fighter jets, our Hornets, all our top jet fighter airplanes, half of them are in such disrepair they can't even get them. They couldn't even get. If we were in war with China or a bunch of countries right now, we might be in trouble because half of our own jet fighters won't fly right now. To me, a politician in either party, his number one is to defend us, the national defense. And we've got to get in, they are appropriating money now, and Trump said so himself, that's going to fix this problem and get this military defense back where it should be. That's his number one thing. He has to protect us.
Yes.
Okay? And with this Korean problem, I don't think it's going to go away because I think the only thing this little dictator stands is force. Hopefully it won't come to that, but I don't think he knows what force could be. We could take him out real quick.
Yeah, I think that a strong economy and then a strong military is what makes the nation great. And Donald Trump is doing both these things, and I'm with you on this point about North Korea. I think North Korea's leader has got to understand that the things he's been doing, or the things that North Korea has been doing for the last 25 years, is not going to be tolerated under this president.
No.
And they're setting these rockets up. This last one, as you said, went to a height that was not reached in past launches. And what are we going to do about it? We're going to have to stop him before this man can wreak havoc upon the citizens of this country.
Yes.
And Donald Trump is going. I listened to him in the Sean Hannity interview, and I could see that they have some things that's on the back burner right now, that they're planning some things, because he was saying that they are going to take care of it.
Yes.
And he's got
hopefully diplomacy and economic sanctions, cutting off their oil might put a hole into it, but even I think China's done a lot more than they ever have before, but then they were still shipping oil to Korea, which that fuels any military engine if you've got the oil resources. Hopefully they were even going to try to put more, curtail that and just squeeze him where he can't do anything, but so far it hasn't worked.
Do you think that we are going to have to confront that we are going to war with North Korea?
Well, it all depends on their leader. And of course the leader he's a sick puppy, like Trump calls him. He is a sick puppy.
Rocket Man.
And Rocket Man and the sick puppy, I don't think know any reason. And unfortunately for him, when a guy like that has no reason, and in his own mind, he's the emperor of the world, that he can blackmail everybody, even the United States of America, I don't really think that he knows what repercussions he's right on the edge of having happen to him. And it's too bad because probably some innocent people will be taken out if that happens. But I hope if we do it, there's no nuclear weapons involved, maybe some super bombs just to bring him to his knees, the least amount of casualties we could get, and of course at all costs keep nuclear warheads out of it. Because once you start throwing nuclear warheads like a firecracker, that can turn into a 4th of July spectacle the world would not want to see.
I don't want to even think about it.
No.
In terms of the kind of weapons we have on both sides of that issue, but something has got to be done
Yes.
about what this man is doing, because this man is a threat to the entire world.
Yes.
And we have a president right now that's not going to be making these decisions. We're going to take a break right now and with WFOV, and we'll see you in about 4 minutes from this point. And while you are away on your hiatus, we're going to continue the program here with allpointstv.com, and we'll be welcoming you back in 4 minutes. We'll go ahead with what we're doing here at the studio, and we'll continue this conversation that we have going on here about Kim Jong-un. And I do hope that he will understand that he's not dealing with the last 3 administrations, with Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Obama. This is not the same kind of, this man doesn't have the same outlook.
No.
And when he says make America great, I think he's also saying that he is serious about protecting the interests of this country and all of its ramifications, and one of them is the military aspect. I listened to him in the Sean Hannity program talking about this, and he said that I don't talk about this. We do not talk about what we're going to do, but we're going to take care of it.
Yes.
And so I just think that there's going to be something that if Kim Jong-un cannot be brought to the table for a discussion about his nuclear proliferation and ambition, I just think that we're going to have to confront him militarily, although that's not a healthy choice for either side.
Well, like you said, with the Obama administration, when we were getting all our troops out of Afghanistan and the Taliban, we were telling them, well, on December 22nd at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're going to remove all our troops. In other words, here's our military plans. Can you imagine? That to me, I watched that and I thought, even some of our leaders like FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, all those good Democrats would even look at that and say, have you people lost your mind? You're giving our, it's like a football team giving your playbook and giving all the plays they're going to run against another team.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this was, some of this just does not seem to be innocent. Some of it looks to me like some of this has almost bordered on, if not in terms of it being central to treasonous type of handling of our affairs. Some of this is like selling the country. I look at the uranium deal, for example, and how do you give 20% of the uranium of this country to Russia? They're concerned about the election intrusion. Supposedly Russia was involved in our election. Yet nobody's talking about the fact that during the Obama administration, with Hillary Clinton being the Secretary of State, that they had 20% of the uranium handed over to the country they're saying the enemy of the country. How does that happen?
Well, yeah, and take a look at the Clinton Foundation. Clinton, when she was selling the uranium, getting $500,000 for speeches, on behalf of the U.S. government, speeches to Russia. And of course, Hillary's campaign manager, John Podesta, had money in those corporations that were dealing with those uranium sales, and his brother, who just now went out of business, was another big perpetrator of uranium in buying and selling on the world international market. He got out because I think he thinks there's legal ramifications coming on this.
Why do you think that's not being investigated by Mueller?
Well, that's because that's not his role right now. My question is, Hillary Clinton erasing 33,000 emails after she was subpoenaed by Congress,
yes,
lying in front of Congress, doing everything that she should be in jail for the next 50 years. And she's been given a free pass. And for some reason, that all started with Clinton. It seemed like the Clintons always had their separate above the law rules. How they were able to put that all together and intimidate the FBI, intimidate Congress, intimidate all the powerful people. Can you imagine just two little politicians, a married liberal little couple coming out of Arkansas, could really hold the American government hostage like this?
We want to welcome back the listeners from 92.1. We want to welcome you back. We want to thank you for staying tuned after your break, and we're glad to have you back with us. We haven't left too far from where we were when you took your break, and we're just simply talking now about the continuation of this administration and the things that are going on right now. This president is in fact facing. I think that we were talking about the uranium deal. I can't figure out why we're not investigating on the other side. If you're talking about collusion, it seems to me all the collusions happen on the side of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
The uranium, isn't that collusion? Wouldn't that be collusion on the part of the Obama administration and the uranium deal? Why aren't we investigating that? And I guess the question comes up: what do you think ought to happen with Mueller? Do you think that Mueller should be? What do you think Donald Trump should do in terms of having?
See, now
Mueller continue what he's doing?
now that you put him on the loose, Trump's got to be careful here, because that's not to say if he didn't cross a line and just start getting partisan, then he would have every right to do away with him, fire him, and do away with this investigation. Unfortunately, if you do that, that brings back nightmares to the Saturday Night Massacre with the Nixon administration when he did the same thing, because if you went to fire him, it would probably be his assistant wouldn't want to go along with it. And then, even though Trump could do this, it would create such a backlash for Trump, because they say McAllister has been a pretty fair shooter for what it's worth. But right now, if he just focuses on this investigation, which he's basically found nothing in a year and a half, and let it ease out, that would probably be Trump's best course to do, because he would look credible. That would be a win-win for him. If he would have to go so far to have to relieve him of his duties, I'm just afraid the political backlash would just, if you think what's going on is something, that would just be like taking the hornet's nest down and throwing it at the liberal press.
Would you say that Mueller should be fired, but is politically unpalatable to do so? I mean, in other words, it's clear that Mueller has an agenda.
Yeah.
But to fire him would look as if Donald Trump is covering up.
Right. So it's a catch-22 right now.
Mm-hmm.
My instincts would be say no, unless Mueller goes way out of his bounds and does, crosses some lines where he's just on a real hunt, and Trump wouldn't have any recourse at that point. I don't think it's going to get that to myself, because after a year and a half of all this nonsense, and you get a former military general that did lie to Pence, Trump fired him for doing that. Mm-hmm. But you take a military hero like him, okay, and he lies to the FBI one time. They've wiped out his bank account. He's selling his house. He's got to bow down to every little thing that he says and watch what he says to the FBI now. Well, on the same level, Hillary Clinton lied she erased 33 emails. She's been corrupt. She's done things 100 times worse than what he ever did. And yet she's walking around scot-free, going out selling a book, bad-mouthing the administration. You talk about a world turned upside down in total out-of-control hypocrisy. George, you're right. I sit back and I watch that and I wonder, how is this possible?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really amazed at it. The Mueller is obviously an attack dog. He's a political hack.
Yeah,
is what he is, and his attack upon this administration has been something that's unconscionable. And what they're really trying to do is they're trying to overturn the election. We had an election in this country in November of last year, and they are trying. Everything they're doing is trying to overturn the election result of the American people.
Absolutely, and it's so ludicrous. Now, very rarely do you ever hear me agreeing with Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. Mm-hmm. They're both leaders still, unfortunately, for the Democratic Party. Good for the Republican Party, because they should have been gone years ago, but they raised too much money for them to kick them out the door. But they've even gone on record telling a lot of these Democrats that are making these overtures for impeachment on Trump, you better back off on that nonsense, because it's not going to happen. It throws the whole thing. It makes us look like just a bunch of out-of-control hacks, and stop it.
Yeah.
And there's your leaders of the Democratic Party that have said that.
Yeah, and they're doing it because they see that the numbers are moving against the Democrats. This narrative that Russia colluded in the election results is such that the Russians caused it. That's not moving the needle in their favor. And I think Nancy Pelosi and Feinstein see that it's not working. They want to change the dynamics, but. I'm just amazed at how we are now a year past the election results and we're still talking about this nonsense. And American people have to be smart too, because this Flynn was he agreed that he admitted that he had lied. Now that has nothing to do with collusion because he should have told the truth. They asked him if he had contact with the Russians. Of course he had contact with the Russians because he was working on behalf of the Trump administration after the election was over. You start talking to governments at that point. You don't wait until the 20th of January and start talking to foreign governments. You want to hit the ground running. So Donald Trump sent him out there to begin to make the contacts so that on the 20th, when the inauguration
they could hit the ground
takes
running.
place, then you are ready to start the transition at that point.
Yes.
He should have told the truth about that. But what the American people are going to be smart here because they're making it appear that this has something to do with the collusion issue that Mueller is supposed to be investigating. It has nothing to do with that. There is absolutely no indication that any collusion went on between the Trump administration and Russia.
None whatsoever. After a year and a half and wasted tax dollars, money by the millions.
I would fire Mueller if it were not politically untenable to do so. If I were Donald Trump, I would fire him, but I do understand the fallout.
Yes.
Because it looks like it would look like a cover-up is taking place.
Yes.
When there's nothing to cover up because there's no collusion.
Now, George, the question is, are they going to be able to keep on doing this for 4 years until next? My instincts tell me right now, from what Mueller has found the first year and a half, which is basically nothing, this is starting to finally even get embarrassing for him. There's nobody. If it was there, they would have had it by now. I'll guarantee.
So you're saying that you're saying then that you see this winding down at some point in the near future.
And I think, believe it or not, it might be starting to wind down right now.
Well, I tell you, after the election takes place next Tuesday, if the Roy Moore gets in there,
oh man,
and they realize that it's not working, and it's clear that if Roy Moore gets through, and he is elected to take over Jeff Sessions' position in the special election, I think at that point it forces them to begin to change their narrative.
Yes.
But if he loses, then that kind of encourages this process to continue.
Yeah, it throws a little bit more. But there's been absolutely no. This is like you say. This Russian thing was drummed up by the Democrats to try to do something to stop what they knew was coming with the Trump administration, to put a shadow over it to slow the train down. Well, everybody thought they were slowing the train down when the Obama repeal backfired, and the Republicans had egg on their face, even though, and here again, you don't see me doing this every day, McConnell, the majority leader of the Senate, like Trump said, well, geez, everybody's down on him for not delivering the votes on that, but he delivered 49 or 48 of the votes. He did a hell of a job. Mm-hmm. He can't control 2 or 3 renegade people like McCain and Corker and some of these vindictive so-called Republicans. Mm-hmm. It really wasn't him working against the president, like the press was trying to say. In fact, behind the scenes, McDonald said him and Trump meet quite a bit and agree quite a bit. And I think this thing with this tax referendum that was just put on, they learned from that Obama repeal debacle. They got together, he made sure he had the votes lined up, or they wouldn't even have to get Pence to be the tiebreaker on this thing, made sure everybody was on board. They did a hell of a job on this because the only one that went off the rails was Corker, and I had to laugh what his statement says, the reason why he voted for it, because he thought we were putting the national security in jeopardy. Well, Mr. Corker, what were you doing when Obama ran it up about $50 trillion while you were sitting there aiding and abetting that when you were a U.S. Senator?
Yeah, I think that this president, if they just simply would give this president the support for the things he's trying to do, we could all be very proud of the fact we played a role in making this a great place for our children and our grandchildren.
Yes.
I want to leave something behind for my children. I have I'm doing grands now, and I just want this country to be great again. And we have a president that can bring the result about, but we need to have the parties to do their jobs. It can't be done,
George. You hit the nail right on the head. All this graft, all these sexual debacles that come up in the Congress. Can you imagine having a $13 million slush fund in Congress?
Oh.
If you and I, when I found that out, I wanted the name of every one of those politicians, Democrat or Republican. I hope they get a list out so they can all have a mass resigning. But stuff like that. Here again, who does that hurt? That hurts us. That hurts the American people. It doesn't hurt the politicians. And they've been guilty of this for decades and decades and decades. They've been unchecked on this stuff. And now, the greatest country in the world, the greatest moral compass in the world, we've always reached out to other countries with aid. We've always promoted every man is free, every woman is free in this world, no matter what circumstances that you're born to. Always been the greatest country in the world, always being outright on all the civil rights issues, always being out front on human rights issues. We've been the leader. We're the best. And to have politicians systematically go out to world leaders and tear us down and apologize for all the wonderful things that we've done in this world. George, do they realize if it wasn't for this country, we could be in a banana republic, we could be speaking German under the Nazi Germany's. This could be a whole different situation if it wasn't for the kindness, for the leadership, for the moral strength that this country has exhibited. And you're right. Trump has put this all together. I'm proud to see it finally happen, regardless of what political label you want to call it, Republican or Democrat. It just happened to be that he calls himself a Republican, and Republicans are for less government, more common sense, and for the people keeping their own money. So, yes, it is time that make America great again. I'm tired of all these naysayers. They don't understand how good they've got it in this country and what this country's done for the rest of the world.
I want those names too of those persons that spent. It was $17 million. They had a slush fund up there to keep this away from the American people that they paid off in 260 different instances where we had this predatory behavior going on by members of Congress.
Yes.
It is unconscionable that our elected leaders would be involved in those kinds of acts and then have the American people foot the bill for it.
We foot their legal bill for it.
We need to have those names.
Yeah, I want the names.
Yes.
And I've heard Trump say, I want the names.
Yes, we need the names. And we need to know how was that passed. It couldn't have been passed behind the members of Congress' back because you can't get that in place behind the backs of the members of Congress.
Well, George, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that would have had to have been an agreement, both political parties to put that together. That just wasn't one party that signed on to that.
It wasn't designed to come out in front of the public where we are aware that the fund exists. But the predatory behavior was of such a nature with the Conyers event. And with you saw Al Franken's what he was doing. You couldn't avoid that given the photographic evidence you had of that. And then they had this guy, Bill Bush. Did you read Bill Bush's part? He simply now can recall what happened back in 2015. You know, every time they get something about the Democrats having been involved in predatory behavior, they can now recall something that Donald Trump did.
Yeah.
They can never let it stand alone.
Well, like Trump said, he apologized for his locker room talk, but during the debates, he brought all the perpetrators that he said Bill Clinton acted on it. He was a predator. This is what he did. He lost his law license and spent $1 million in legal fees. Here they are. Brought him right to the debate.
Right. Why was that in the New York Times with Bill Bush? Well, he said that he was reading about what the comments that Trump made in terms of that statement we all know that was made back in the time period, and this was made years ago. And he said that I was just thinking about that. I came across and read it again. He said, Mr. President, you did say that. Well, you know how it is when men are talking around each other in the locker room, kind of having those kind of conversations. We say a lot of things. And much of it is the big fish story, you know, that we did all these things. Much of it just braggadocious.
I mean, I guess I've been guilty of it, not in the last 20 years or so as I've gotten older, but when I was young and in high school and college, we probably made some inopportune comments in the locker room about certain things. I think we all did. But I think maybe a lot of the women might have done that too.
I was surprised when I was principal. I went in the girls' bathroom. After school was over, I would go in there and just look and see what was on the walls. I was surprised that the girls' bathroom, they were writing as much on the walls.
Oh man!
About the boys. The boys writing about the what they were saying and they were doing. And I said, "Wow, that's as much graffiti in here."
You know, George, things were, when I went to school years ago, things were a lot more innocent. They really were. But I did have a real good friend of mine, and I won't mention any names, and I won't mention any school districts, but he told me that the biggest perpetrators in some of the biggest scenes in some of the chaos that can be created by some of these sexual innuendos were by a lot of the young women in the high schools. He said, not that the men, the boys are right there too, a lot of cases, but he says it was a two-way street. It just wasn't a one-way street. And unfortunately, with everything that you see now, I mean, God, I'd hate to have a Christmas party this year and have set up a mistletoe. I think I'd be going to jail if I kissed the wrong person.
Yeah, the predatory behavior is it's a lot different now. We're in a politically correct environment right now, and so it plays a little bit differently. But yeah, I think we all had those moments when we were saying things that
we're not proud of.
Yeah, we were saying things above what the other person said, trying to top the last narrative about how great they were and how they were out here doing all of these things. And so on, but it's just interesting how we have this president, and we have persons trying to make it look like Donald Trump is some kind of a person against the country interests and doing things that are hurting the nation. When this man is probably the biggest patriot we've had in the last 25 years or so.
Bar none. Bar none. I mean, even I hate to pick on the Bushes because I still respect and like the Bush family, but what I don't understand about the Bushes, they became such in their own little safe space in their own world. Well, W, when he got out of office, said, "Well, it's not my role to take pot shots at a sitting president," and I respect him for that. Mm-hmm. Okay, but there was two things that irked me about what he did. He let the liberal press bang on him for 8 years. By the time they were done with him, he was down to about 25% before he left office in the polls, and that created a lot of that, the Obama syndrome too, a lot of that, okay, because of that nonsense. He never defended himself. Number two, Obama was in power for 8 years. Bush never lifted his finger and said one word, one way or another, about Obama. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Trump's not in for a year, and he gets up and starts making these sidewinding, hitting below the belt comments on Trump. Well, shame on them for doing that. Shame on them.
Dave, we have never seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
Where a president that has left office will continue in terms of running, trying to run policy that he no longer has electoral responsibilities to do. I've never seen this before.
But I've never seen Republicans, so-called Republicans like ex-President Bush, come out and start making pot shots at Trump.
That's another thing that surprised me, that he was very quiet for 8 years and
then said nothing.
And then he comes out, but it shows me the network too, though, that we have in place. It seems like to me that the two parties are the flip side of each other. And this man's an outsider, and look at how they doubled up and gained on this outsider.
Well, and don't forget,
because the incumbent party is the two parties are really the incumbent.
And don't forget, when you're dealing with political royalty like the Bushes and the Clintons think that they are, I think maybe they're finally going to go away. I hope. I've had enough of the Clintons and the Bushes. Okay. But maybe, too, being a competitive family in the political wars, well, Trump did rough up Jeb Bush, who had all the money and was supposed to be the candidate in the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm not saying all the things that he did, low energy Jeb and all that stuff was, it was funny. I mean, I have to admit, it was hilarious. And poor Jeb Bush was not used to, he was always the real calm, everything's wonderful, let's have a sip of tea and everything's, he wasn't ready to go against a Manhattan brawler like Trump. And I think the Bush family had a lot of resentment that he sort of cuffed him up in the primaries, and I think there was some resentment there. Maybe all that wasn't political talk. Maybe it was just mano talk where Trump roughed up his brother, maybe.
Did you think that Donald Trump had a chance when he first got out of the when he announced his candidacy? Did you think he had a chance as an outsider to become the nominee of the Republican Party?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because they'd gone with this nice talk with Romney and McCain. You know, the nicey-nicey, let's get along with the Democrats. So I knew that wasn't going to work. We were going to have a fighter. This guy was a fighter, number one. Number two, the reason why I thought he had a chance, he was a celebrity. His name, having his reality show on television, having him as a world businessman all over the world with all his businesses. You know, that Trump name was sort of a stamp thing. That's a huge advantage. How many politicians have ever had an advantage of a name like that? So I put that Trump name in the celebrity along with a fighter, along with a businessman, and I said to myself, man, those three things might get him elected.
Yeah, I was hopeful, but I just didn't think he could sit down 14 seasoned politicians. But one after the other, yes. I began to look at it and I said, well, this man has a chance.
Yes.
And then running against Hillary Clinton, that was another hill to climb, and he began to catch fire in his campaign for the presidency once he had become the nominee, and I began to see possibilities there, and I said, this guy really has a chance to win this election.
There's one thing he's got. He's got the charisma, and he's very smart. He's got a very high IQ.
He is very smart.
He knows how to connect with the average person.
I don't know if
Being
the country has recognized at this point what they have in this outsider. This man can really be a transformative president, and I think that maybe half the country, you know, it seems to me that we've got one half the country pulling against the president, the other half is kind of supporting what he's doing and hope he will do a great job. I hope we will recognize that we were at a pivotal moment in history, and we were at the precipice of either going over the cliff or being pulled back from the brink.
Yes.
And I think history is going to be very kind to this president.
Yes.
In terms of we were at the edge of a cliff.
Yes.
And we've been pulled back from that, and I don't know. It seems to me that we may well be reading in history books that this was a transformative moment.
I agree with you. You know, we were on an economic cliff in this country. What was happening to us, we were becoming sort of like just a third world nation economically. The most powerful country in the world. Unbelievable. And then domestically, with the ISIS, all the terrorism, with all the threats in this world, North Korea, with all that that was surrounding us on the world arena, we were in trouble, both here at home and in the world. And this guy right here has come in and he's put a stopgap, high economic standards going that's going to benefit us, and he's put an end to this world economic blackmail like Mr. Rocket Man of Korea perpetrated on these other presidents.
Can you even imagine where this country would be if we had Hillary Clinton elected president?
Well, yes, I can. She'd already had on her plans to let in another 6 million illegal immigrants. That was on the books right there, right from the get-go. And that would have guaranteed no Republican president would have ever been elected again.
Yeah, let in 6 million more Democratic voters.
Yes.
We have the three things I see that we need to have done in this first term, which will ensure really a second term for this president. Build that wall. This was one of the things he ran on.
Yes.
Build a wall. Get rid of Obamacare, which is a disaster.
Yep.
And reduce the taxes,
which is happening.
Which is happening now. And
that was huge.
That's a huge win.
Yes.
If we can get that, if we can get the tax cuts in place, and Dave, you were saying this earlier, that if the tax cuts are in fact made, the takeoff of this economy will be unparalleled.
Like a skyrocket.
4% will look like it's it's like it's a Sunday school type of thing.
Yes.
The church service would be the 5, 6, 7, 8%.
Yes.
Increase in the economy, and it's possible if you give the people their money back, where they can make their own decisions.
Can you imagine? Just not too long ago, the liberals in Obama were telling us, don't get overzealous about this economy stuff, man. We've got a lot of projects here for the federal government to take care of. Just be satisfied with a 1 point GMP. That's third world country nonsense.
That's banana republic, like you were saying. I'd like to see the president get his agenda passed, and I think that given the fact that we have an election coming up in 2018, I think it's going to force the hand of those naysayers. Because the American people are watching this and they're seeing this obstruction that's taking place.
Yes.
And I think a lot of persons are going to get on board when we get into the election year and people are paying more attention to what their political leaders are doing.
I really believe, George, and I don't know if you would go along with me on this, but if the election was held again for president tomorrow morning, I think Trump would pick up quite a bit. I really do.
I think so. I think that the president is I think a lot of persons are very happy with the president. The media is not going to talk about the things this president has done very well by this country.
No, you got a whole list of them.
They're not going to talk about the 25% increase in the stock market. The stock market is back, 24,000. It never reached that point before. We were talking about the unemployment rate. They're not going to report that good news.
No. What they like to report on is when Trump has some fun with the Navajo war heroes that he had at the White House the other day and mentions, well, at least you guys aren't misrepresenting Pocahontas. Oh my gosh, to the press, that's the biggest hot issue that has ever besmirched us. Oh, that's just being racist to say something like that. But the bottom line was, she was the one that perpetrated fake Indian heritage so she could get $400,000 a lick for representing the Indians for fake phony speeches at Yale University. She's the one that should be under the microscope for lying to the American public.
That's going to be the litmus test in terms of whether or not there's any prosecutorial things take place in terms of Hillary Clinton. This violation of the laws of this country, if that stands, then we are a banana republic.
Yeah, but here again, and you heard me say it once in our get together here today. How in the world were Bill and Hillary Clinton so powerful that they intimidated our government, anywhere from our Congress to the FBI through our justice system, get away? They have a separate rules of their own, sort of like little mafia rules that they go by in this country, and people from both parties and people from all spectrums of our government let them get away with it for this long.
Yes. Well, Dave, it's been really good to have you here, and I'm with you 1,000% in terms of the job that Donald Trump is doing. It's not popular to say that, but we have to be honest. This president has been transformative, and I think America is back because of his presidency. We got to have you back for another segment of this sometime in the very near future. Keep your eyes on the prize out there where you are, and want to thank you for listening to the program here, and we will in fact see you next week. Until that time, I want you to follow your dream, because if you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.